Welcome to Leadership Mind, the podcast where we dive deep into the minds of top industry leaders to unearth the hidden gems and treasures of their experience and insights. Join us as we sit down with accomplished professionals for unscripted conversations that reveal the gold nuggets of wisdom from their personal journeys of growth and development. Each episode is a journey into the heart of leadership, where we explore the challenges, triumphs, and lessons learned by those who have navigated the complexities of their respective industries. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and empowered as we uncover the valuable gems of knowledge that have shaped the careers and lives of our guests. Joining us again today is Carson Rowh, the co-CEO of a Nebraska-born Home Trends, a furniture retail store. Today, we dive into the topic of creating your own luck and cultivating positive mental real estate. This is an insightful conversation that will help you understand how to see yourself as a person that can and will create your own luck and how to cultivate positive mental real estate. Enjoy. All right. Well, welcome back, Carson. It's awesome to have you back on Leadership Mind.
Thank you. Excited to do it. And we had a great time last time. I think this one will be the same.
Yeah, had a lot of really great feedback from our conversation. So I'm definitely excited to do this, and I'm excited about our topic today. We're going to talk about creating your own luck and cultivating some positive mental real estate. Um, and I was thinking about this over the course of my life, and I used to feel like a really unlucky person. And I was like, oh, I can never feel like I get ahead. I feel like I can't win ever. And something that I started doing probably when I had my first business, I've been an entrepreneur for over 17 years. And something that I started doing was telling myself that I can win or I can try new things and not be so scared. And one of the biggest things that I feel like the breakthrough for me has been in creating my own luck is follow up and actually following through with anything that I want to do. So I remember when I was getting the job at the sleep store and I was interviewing with the previous owner, and I saw the job posting, and the first thing I did was call him and say like, "Hey, can I, get a job there?" And he was like, "Well, send me your resume." And I was like, "Okay." So I sent him my resume, and then I called again. "Hey, did you get that?" And I just kept pursuing. And I was like, I feel like that is one way to create your own luck, especially in business and in especially environments right now where it may feel like people are on like kind of the short end of the stick or they don't have as much ability to do what was previously done. But I'm curious if that has been your experience or what you think of creating your luck and how you've done that.
Gosh, it just when you're talking, it just reminded me of a lot of different things. One is one of my, best employees. I've been hiring and training and managing people for 25 years now, and one of the very best employees that I had, interviewed the first time. There was just, I don't know, I got a feeling I didn't care for her for some reason or another. I just, I'm really allergic to drama, and I just for some reason I got that vibe, and so I just kind of followed that lead and said no, and she came back and applied again, and I said no, and the third time she came back, I finally said, you know what the heck, we'll give it a try. And she turned out to be one of the absolute best employees I've ever had in 25 years. Just disciplined and diligent, and I was so wrong about my opinion, and I'm just glad that she stuck with it and kept kept her persistence level high.
Uh-huh.
It turned out great for both of us, and I'm still in contact. She doesn't work for us anymore, but I'm still in contact with her. After all these years, and so a good example from somebody else's life.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned was just when you're feeling like you can't do it and just trying to persist. One of the favorite talks that I've ever seen. Uh, I can't remember the guy's name. It's called The Last Lecture, Randy Pausch. There we go.
Mhm.
Highly recommend everybody read that. He's a college professor at, I think, uh, Carnegie Mellon, and he's been diagnosed with cancer. He's got a legendary career, and he's given this last hour and a half talk to his students and his family to kind of send them off with the things that he wants to send them off with. And he talks specifically about those challenges that we face and how, he calls them brick walls. And, he said that's kind of the obstacle that gets put up to see if you really want it, right? The brick walls are there for the other people. The brick walls are there to keep the other people out. So don't get discouraged or frustrated, because that is the test that proves whether or not you're worthy or truly want that thing. And so I think that's a good reminder for people. And then you've got legendary cases like, Colonel Sanders from Kentucky Fried Chicken. He took that recipe to over 1,000 people and got no's for 1,000 times in a row before he finally got his first yes. And obviously that's become, one of the greatest business stories of all time. So yeah, I love that. I think it's really, really important. And, I look up to that, and I respect that thing. As
Mhm.
far as my own career goes, I would say it kind of goes back to our first conversation. It's that stay with something long enough, right? Give yourself a chance to become a subject matter expert. Give yourself a chance to flourish. And I think there's a lot of examples of that throughout my own life. When I look back on it, I was a college athlete, and I played football at a small college. And when I showed up on day one as a freshman, I was about 7 deep on the depth chart. I was a fullback, and pretty on the small side for fullbacks, and not the fastest guy in the world. And so it looked like the chances of me really even making the team, frankly, I was on scholarship, but it looked like the chances of me making the active roster. They could only keep 3 fullbacks on the active team. Everybody else had to redshirt or get cut. And it looked, pretty tough. There was some great talent there. Two guys that were returning from the prior year. One was a part-time starter from the prior year, really athletic, really strong, really fast, knew the offense very well. Some of the incoming talent was pretty extraordinary. There was a guy I just was looking at him on Facebook this morning because we remain friends now, but he was a really highly recruited fullback. He got offers from out of high school from Notre Dame and Miami, and he was 6 feet tall, 255 pounds. He benched 420 pounds. I'm a small town farm kid, and I was weighing about 190 pounds and probably benched about 250 at the time. And, just throughout the course of that fall camp, I just kept working, kept making plays, showing up every single day, putting in maximum effort. And as time went on, some of those more talented people, exposed themselves as being, not capable of sustaining their effort or taking the short way out. And so I did end up making the active roster. I was a third string fullback. I made the active roster and tried to do everything I could. I got to play on special teams. I made some really good plays on special teams. Again, 100% heart and effort, and probably about. And I was starting to split some carries. I was getting some plays in the game, and about 4 games in, something like that, the starter got arrested for getting in a fight, and so he was suspended. And so I got the start that next week. I went from, really a month earlier thinking I probably wouldn't even make the team, more than likely, to, 4 games in, I'm the starter. And so, and I did okay. I didn't do great, but again, continued to put all of my effort into it. And eventually, when the starter came back, he came off suspension a couple weeks later. The starter came back. I retained my starting position throughout the entire year. So again, I think that persistence, that stick-to-itiveness has always been, I guess, part of my DNA or whatever. I can think of similar situations in high school as well, and also in my business career. Doing things, for longer than it seemed necessary, but ultimately, being able to realize, some gain off of that. So.
Mhm. That's incredible. It's awesome to see, the looking at it, it's like you're facing like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna even make the team, and then to be able to continue to show up and then to do that, that's pretty impressive. How do you feel like you have done that in like your business and as the CEO? And how do you inspire other people to think that they're on a winning team or they have any luck, especially with some of like what we're facing right now with like what's happening around us culturally?
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge that any leader has is, how do you get people engaged in the work that you're doing? How do you get them to believe that they're on a winning team, that there's some momentum out there that we can capture? And then I think the biggest part, and I guess the important key there is activity, right? How do you make people want to do the things that cause good things to happen? And if there's maybe one theme, I would say it's that activities or actions can create their own belief, right? I think sometimes people, when they talk, they try to motivate or inspire people just with an idea, and I think there's some value in that. I certainly have had some people in my life that have been able to speak to me in a way that made me think about things differently and made me probably behave differently. But I think for me and for a lot of people, proof has to come first, right? So if we're saying like, regardless of the economic conditions being difficult, we're gonna win, and this is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna make these follow-up calls. We're gonna roll out these new programs. We're gonna put more offers in customers' hands. Um, we can't wait for us to all believe in that as a truth. We have to first take action, and then as we start to see results from those actions, now our belief jumps in and starts to compound this activity and speed that up. So I think if there's anything as a leader, it's like, how can we make sure that because if I tell somebody, hey, everything's going to be okay, but all they do is sit and think about it or worry about it, it's probably not going to be okay. So belief, or trying to transfer belief, I don't think is enough. If we can force the activity levels of ourselves and our people. Like, I know if I do 10 of this activity, it's going to lead to one of this result. And so thereby, if I want 5 results, I need to do, 50 of those activities. If we can drill that down and become disciplined enough to do the thing that's going to cause the outcome that we want, once people see that, hey, I said that if you did this 10 times, you'd get one result. Once people see that that's true, then we have an opportunity to create some momentum off of that.
Mhm. Yeah. I really liked, last time when we talked, something that stuck out to me was that you said, you can have the mindset all day long, but if there aren't habits and if there isn't action behind it, you're going to kind of be lagging always because like your habits are going to set the tone. And I've heard it said, creating habits is such a more positive way to get the results that you want than just leaning on willpower alone. Because if you're only leaning on willpower, then you're going to kind of be left at the end of the day. So you create that action and the habits to sustain the action and get to where you want to go to be led down that path.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, willpower, unfortunately, is very fleeting, right? If we waited to do the right things and until the days when we felt like it, we'd get very little accomplished. So yeah, there's no question. Like, what you do on a daily basis, those little activities, that's the building block. That's the foundation. We have a saying that it's from Will Smith of all people, on that we used to print on one of our meeting agendas, and it was, you don't start out to build a brick wall by saying, I'm going to build a brick wall. You lay one brick as perfectly as it can be laid, one at a time, and over time, a brick wall, is produced. But it's about, setting every little foundational activity, every little foundational habit, and I think that's really the foundation of any kind of change, business or personal or otherwise. And I think when you mentioned, mindset, like I love to read about, talk about, think about all this mindset stuff, but I've been fooled a lot in my career with, hiring people that knew the words to say, right? They could repeat the mantras that we see in the, self-help books or on the inspirational videos, and they claimed to want those things, but ultimately, in too many cases, I found they weren't really willing to do the thing that it takes to have that. So They're living too far forward. There's some psychology out there that says that, if you've got some personal goal, I'm gonna, lose X amount of weight or whatever. There's some psychology out there that says don't say that out loud, right? Keep that internal. And the reason why is because when you say something out loud, you get this little dopamine hit in your brain that kind of gives you the reward before you've done the work. And it tends to make people not be as disciplined about following through on the actions that causes them to actually lose the weight. So keeping those goals internalized and doing your work in the dark a little bit, I think is a good way to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have an example of how you do your own personal work in the dark? And like, how do you have like a daily method of operation to kind of keep your, I call it positive mental real estate because I think our brains really are real estate and you can have
Yeah.
like negative positive, negative real estate taking up your brain and complaining and worrying and just as much as you can like looking for positive outcomes and things like that. How do you on like a daily basis do you have something that you are
Yeah, I
doing?
think I think there's some um, habits or routines that I've installed over the years. One of the things I realized, probably 10 years ago is there's just too much in the world to think about. There's too much to worry about. There's too much that's out of my circle of control. And unfortunately, I don't think I'm different than most people, but for me, when I see a negative news story about some war going on somewhere or some poverty situation somewhere in the world, it's not that those things are important, and it's not that I want to ignore them, but it affects me psychologically and emotionally. I start feeling down. I start feeling deflated. I start feeling like there's nothing that we can do to change anything. And I used to be a extremely voracious consumer of news. Right. I read a newspaper or two a day. I had RSS feeds on my BlackBerry back before iPhone, where I got up to the minute news stories from everywhere, right? Financial markets and world news and all this stuff. And I really prided myself on being the most up to date person on current events in the room. I could talk with anybody about finances or real estate or business or pop culture or whatever the thing was. But I think your focus and attention can only go so many places, and I needed that at that time in the business 10 years ago. I needed that strength to focus on myself and the business challenges that were in front of me, and I couldn't afford to give away my energy to those outside things. And so this is not a new thing. Tim Ferriss in his book, The 4 Hour Work Week, advocates this, and I think Jonathan Haidt is a psychologist that also advocates for this. But I think the cue that turned me off there or on was somebody said, go to the library and find the newspaper from 1 year ago and tell me how many of those headlines really ended up meaning anything. And I thought back to that, all that stuff that I was stressed out about that was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal a year ago. Almost none of it ended up mattering at all, and yet it took up valuable real estate in my mind, and I was concerned about it, and it pulled energy away from me. And so I really just kind of decided to go on a no news diet. So I turned off 100% of I haven't really in 10 years hardly ever watched the news on TV, literally like 2 days a year, maybe. I very rarely read newspapers. And I would say for probably 7 years, it was almost zero. I am back to reading a few articles in the Wall Street Journal occasionally, but I took myself completely out of that stream of news and negativity. And again, I don't want to put anybody down that's doing that. I think all those issues probably are really, really important to certain people, but almost none of them were under my direct control. And it pulled too much energy away from the things that I needed to focus on, which was my business. And so, I even stopped listening to music in the car. Right, I went with the net time from Tony Robbins, no extra time. So I'm listening to books or podcasts that are related to the problems and issues that I have and that I'm trying to solve for, that are within my control. And so I focused all of my time and energy on using those tools to try to get better and not worrying about the things in the world that I didn't have any control over. And so I think that's given me a lot of a lot of peace. It gives me the ability to rest when I've got downtime instead of being stressed out about the world or politics or things like that. And I've always looked at it, not always, but my 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 tone in the last 10 years has been, as a business owner, if there's some world or economic issue that's going to affect us down the road, I'm no different than a poker player. I'm going to play the cards that are in my hand at that time, and me worrying about whether or not oil prices are going to double or the tariffs are going to go up, a lot of that is just simply wasted energy for me.
Mhm. Yeah, that is very insightful to be able to hold your own energy and making sure, that you're not just expending it wherever and having your attention pulled in directions that really you don't have any control over, you don't have any way to like change the situation or outcome, but making sure that internally you are controlling what you can control. And a lot of times, what I see with some people is that it's the thoughts that they have. And at first, there's like this battle, like, oh no, I can't control my thoughts. They're just whatever I'm thinking is just what's on. And I'm like, no, that's not the truth. Like, the truth is, you are choosing some of these thoughts and you can change them. You can
Yeah.
really have the ability
Yeah,
change.
I don't know if this is what you're referencing, but this is the Vipassana meditation
Uh,
principle, right? Like, I can be separated from my thoughts. I can sit and because we have 1,000, 10,000 thoughts a day, right? I'm bad, I'm good, it's this, it's that, it's this might happen, that might happen. Like, it never stops. I mean, every moment of consciousness is filled with this complete stream of thoughts. And let's be honest, the vast majority of those are probably negative. And I think before you have this awareness of the fact that you are not your thoughts, I don't know where those thoughts came from. I don't know where they come from, right? It's like turning on a radio station and there's just this constant stream of activity, and I don't feel any ownership over that.
mhm,
I can choose to listen or not to listen. And I think if we can treat our thoughts like that in a meditation session where we can simply just sit and not draw judgment, but just watch these thoughts come and go from our mind, and watch it come up, this negative thing that I'm thinking about, and then just let it go. And in seconds, it's gone forever, or gone for now. And another thought is going to come along and replace it. And another thought comes along and replace it. But if you can take that arm's length approach and just watch this stuff go by, and again, choose the ones that you decide to internalize or make yours, and let the other ones be whatever generated by the universe, whatever it is, and not feel any ownership for that, I think is a pretty powerful technique. And so if you combine that with being extraordinarily protective of what you allow to go into your mind, like, where do these negative thoughts come from? Well, there's a pretty good chance, if I've been soaking myself in this tea of negative news and all these things out of my control, there's a pretty good chance that that string of consciousness might represent parts of that negativity. And so I'm really cautious about the fishbowl that I fill in around me. And I'm going to be aggressive in protecting my mind from those things. It's already hard enough, right? I mean, none of us ever gets completely away from any negativity. And so why would you want to make that worse by not being really protective about what goes in your head? So
mhm. Yeah, and we as humans are prone to negativity bias anyways. So it's like any negative, it's like latch onto it and then hold it as a thought and like compound it. Um, do you ever find yourself thinking negative thoughts, and how do you put a stop to it? How do you like say like this is enough? Are you self-aware enough now to kind of see if you're traveling down a certain path?
Uh, yes, but have I mastered being able to turn that off? No, I'd love to meet the person who has, right? I mean, there's no question that things like, the reading that I've done, things like a meditation practice, things like simply, being older and more experienced in life and knowing that, peaks and valleys are going to come and go, all of that helps. But I think I'm pretty good at recognizing it for the most part.
Mhm.
And I think I'm pretty good at arresting it for the most part. Um, but I still need people around me. It could be my wife, it could be my business partner. Somebody can tell me sometimes to turn it off. I can't control it if it's a particular issue that I'm worried about, or in the case of my wife, sometimes she can look at me and see where I'm going sometimes, and can be that voice to help me recognize it if I'm not in that moment. So, and then I would say the other thing that is maybe the biggest key here. This is from Tony Robbins. Your physiology leads your psychology. A lot of people think, man, if I feel a certain way, then my body's going to do this thing. And Tony Robbins would say it's kind of the opposite. That if I force my body to do something, my mind goes along for the ride. I don't know. Did I talk about my daughter's situation in our last interview?
No,
Studying for homework. Did I tell that story?
no.
Okay, so this is my favorite story about that particular thing. And it is, when my daughter was really small, I had just got back from, I went to a Tony Robbins event in Tampa, Florida 2 years in a row. And so I was kind of had all these ideas swimming fresh in my mind a little bit. And my daughter, who was normally a really good student, she was a grade school kid at the time. And she was really struggling with this math homework, and she was crying and just saying, I'll never figure this out. I can't do it, and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, she's got tears running down her cheeks and the whole thing. And I said, hey, listen, just stop for a second. um, you know how would if you were a really a happy person, how would your face be? And she'd lift her head up and put her chin out a little bit. And I said, if you're a really happy person, would your shoulders be like this, or would they be back like this? And she pulled her shoulders back. And we went through this whole routine, and by the end of it, she's got a big smile. She's laughing, still got tears on her cheeks, which was just the cutest thing in the whole world. But it just completely illustrated that thing where if you act like a sad person, it brings that in, and if you act like a confident or happy person, it brings that in. Another favorite story of mine, probably the most important thing that's ever happened to me in my life. When I was in grade school and early junior high, I was extremely self-conscious, very shy. I was certainly not a popular kid or anything along that line, and just super self-conscious about everything. And I think I know it was between the summer of between seventh and eighth grade. My mom said to me, people are attracted to self-confidence. And I have no idea why, but that stuck with me. And so when I went back to school for my eighth grade year, I acted confident. I pretended to be, even though, my gosh, it didn't feel natural inside. But the feedback loop I got from people immediately was exactly that. Like, people started treating me different. I went from being one of the worst athletes in my small school class to being one of the best. And I kind of moved from the inconsequential to the popular side of the table or whatever. And so it was just interesting how this physiology led my psychology. I did something, or my daughter did something, and the feedback that we got helped change things up here. And so, I think that's probably the thing that I still lean on now, right? I mean, if I'm struggling to get my head in a good place, I'm going to go move. I'm going to get some exercise. Go walk the dog. Get outside in nature. Do things that I'm comfortable with, that I enjoy, that I have some mastery over, and it brings me back to this place where this is a part of my life I've had some success in, and I feel good, and that tends to change my outlook about my success odds with this other thing that I'm worried about or whatever. So anyway, movement and physiology, I think, can really help. And I think you see that with people who suffer from depression and things like that. Like, I think some of the most important things you can do involve getting your physical body in motion, and that kind of, again, it probably does a whole host of things, right? It affects your hormones and the chemicals that are pumping through your bloodstream that help that process turn around a little bit.
For sure. I love that story that you told, both of them. And the self-confidence one, like just acting more self-confident, because you've got to kind of consider, well, what does a confident person look like, or what do they do? How do they act? And how am I not doing that? And what can I do in order to act as though I'm confident?
Yeah,
And then that feedback loop, because I think that one of the things in relation to creating your own luck is like, okay, instead of saying, I'm not a lucky person or I'm not a self-confident person, I suck or whatever, instead of saying that, like, no, I am lucky. I am confident right now. I can do this. Like, all of the sudden, that just brings out a whole different side. And people definitely respond to that differently. And it kind of brings you out of that victimhood mentality.
yeah,
And then that's what I think about when I think a lot about creating your own luck is like not just thinking of yourself as a victim, just uh, at the whim of whatever is happening in the world,
yeah,
whatever's happening around me.
yeah.
Instead of that, allowing myself to be like, oh no, I have some autonomy. I can make some decisions here. I can relate to this differently than what I am right now.
Yeah. No, I love that analogy that you use. I've always had this picture in my head like a pinata. Like, would you really want to just be hanging on a string, subject to every change of the wind, or would you rather feel like you have some control? I mean, and I think both sides of both types of people have to live in a little bit of a fantasy for a moment, right? Of course, we don't have perfect control over everything. I could get cancer tomorrow, or economic things could happen that could take the business away, and there may not be something in that particular case that I can do about it. The question is, where do you want your foundation to be built from? Do you want your foundation to be built from? I'm a victim and I'm subject to everything that somebody says or does to me in every economic condition and every news cycle story and all of that, or do I get to choose my direction, and do I get to decide which of those things draw energy from me, and do I get to decide how I react? And so I know people that they're completely unimpressed with the entrepreneurial story that somebody tried 100 times before they were successful, but I choose to take that as possibility for me. And I think each person has to make that decision for themselves. But I think the question is, what do you think is more likely on an odds basis to be successful over time? You can put somebody out in the world that just consistently believes that things are happening for them and not to them, and consistently believes that no matter how many rejections they get, they're ultimately destined to be a great entrepreneur or a great athlete or whatever their pursuit is.
Mhm.
And I'm choosing the one that continues to believe that just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it only means it hasn't happened yet,
Yeah.
not because it won't, right? So you used a word earlier, but it reminds me of, I think it was a book that I read that said, if you can change the sentence that you use, instead of I never win anything to I haven't won anything yet, comma, yet at the end of the sentence, if you can just do that, you can still acknowledge reality, but you can put a different spin on it that I think helps to drive a little bit of motivation for yourself.
Absolutely. One of my favorite ways to, like, when I feel myself going down a path of like, it's just really negative. I'm complaining. I'm not happy. And I know it because my whole conversation internally is, well, what if this goes wrong? What if I don't get this? What if this happens? And like that just those two words, what if, when it starts being like, well, this just definitely isn't going to happen. I can like flip that now to, well, what if this does work for me? What if I try again? What if I follow up one more time? What if I show up again? What will happen if I do something different than what I've done before? And that always, just like that, like little key of like, what if? I'm driving and maybe I'm late and I think, well, what if the lights turn green? They don't always turn green for me, but a lot of times they will, and I'll be like, "Oh, okay, this is really cool. This is happening." Or what if the situation does work out for me? What if I do get what I want? And what if I do win the game? What will that be like? And then I start thinking a little bit because our minds also have the ability to start asking if we have that curiosity of like, what if this happens? Then our brains start looking for possibilities to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very powerful in creating your own luck too. Like, what if this does work? What if I do this?
Yeah, yeah. I've heard somebody else say, imagine yourself in this book, in this story, or this movie, right? And the star or the protagonist is, they're in the middle of the big challenge, which there always is in every great book and every movie, right? Like, what if this is your moment for that, right? What if this is 20 years from now, you're going to write the book and you're going to say, hey, at one time I was here with all these challenges and it looked like there was no way out. And somehow it happened up here. And that makes the story incredible. It makes it so much more sweet,
Hmm.
And the other thing I was going to mention that is maybe a phrase or a tool or a thought that I use in those times is, you do get to running downhill pretty quickly going, man, it's going to do this and then that's going to lead to that. And so sometimes I'll just stop myself and say, what's actually true right now? Like, even if I think there's a 99% chance of a recession tomorrow and things are going to get really, really hard, even if I really believe that, at this very moment, what's actually true? And at this very moment, what's actually true is we got a great company, got a great employee base. We're full staffed. We're profitable. Like, all those things may still happen. All those things that I worry about. But the fact of the matter is, at this very moment, that's not true. And so I'll deal with that when I get there. But I'm not going to deal with it now. I'm not going to let it take my mental energy now.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful to just kind of stop it, see it as it's kind of happening in present time and then really ask yourself like what's really going on here, because I can do that too, where it's like, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, then I'm gonna end up homeless, like the extreme cases. That's like where my
Sure.
mind goes is like the extreme. And if I can just pull back for a second, I'm like, nowhere close to that. Nowhere close to
Yeah.
like the end of the line.
Yeah.
And like taking a moment to just pause and be like,
Yeah.
it's not true right
That,
now.
that that's actually a technique that Tim Ferriss talks about, and he suggests that you should do every year, which is called fear setting.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, imagine what the worst case scenario would be, right? So I lose my business and I'm unemployed and I'm standing in a soup line at the homeless shelter. I've lost my house. Uh, you know, is that survivable? Could I survive if that were true? And I think it is. And so sometimes that takes the sharp edge of that fear off to go, you know what, if that really happened, like, gosh, I got a tent and I could camp and it wouldn't be all that bad. And I've got friends and family in another state I could go stay with. And it's not that you want those things to happen, but you realize that, like, the world isn't over if
Mhm.
those worst case scenarios happened. It's going to look different, but the world isn't over for sure. So love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And, and sometimes it's like, okay, there's a beat of like, I wouldn't have all of this pressure and all of this stress. So then it's like that recommitment and that re-choosing back into like my life again. I want to keep doing what I have in front of me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think truthfully, I think that's worth examining periodically as well.
Yeah.
I mean, just because the opposite side of my statements earlier about stick with something long enough, the opposite side of that is, if you look at the things that you're going to have to do in the next 12 months, if you got to keep doing those things over and over and over again, is that the life you want? And if the answer to that is no, then I think that's fair to sit and have a reasonable conversation with yourself on occasion, but don't mistake that long-term choice with thinking that some other path isn't going to have its own challenges and downsides. So be really honest about what all the other options are too. If you're gonna sit in this moment of discomfort with what you have to do as part of your role in this moment, in this career or job or relationship or whatever it is, at least be honest out there, right? So many people, for example, get divorced, I don't know, 50% or something along that line, but second and third divorces even have a higher percentage than first marriages, right? So the truth is a lot of those people are never going to find that thing they thought they were looking for, or that they thought they would find with somebody else or in another relationship or another job or whatever. And so, just be very honest about the pluses and minuses with the other options if you're going to analyze things that way.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think that there is like a level of like just getting comfortable with discomfort and being uncomfortable. Like people don't, a lot of people I don't feel like realize that. Like if something is uncomfortable, like initially we think it's bad because like sometimes the fear will trigger us, but it's like it's not always mean it's bad. It just means like there's another opportunity for growth or for some different viewpoints.
Yeah, you know, I should have mentioned this probably earlier, but I think, and I need to take this medicine myself a lot more often, but to build the mindset of shying away from discomfort, I think really does a disservice to you and your future, and it's for a lot of things. It's for mental health and your enjoyment of this ride. I've found, for example, in years past when I was training for powerlifting or CrossFit or something along that line, you know, I'm at work and I'm pretty concerned about this workout I got to do this afternoon. It's going to push me absolutely to the wall, and it's going to probably be painful in some cases. And man, that sure makes the text message about the little employee issue seem much less, earth shattering at that moment. So I think in some ways, if you want to, balance your life, you should have something outside of your work or your main thing that pushes you hard enough that when you're doing your daily job in the course of things, that becomes part of the flow. It's not the end of the world. It's not, it doesn't seem as earth shattering if you've got these other challenges that compete for your concerns. Let's say you're going to be concerned about something anyway, right? Why not be concerned about this workout you're going to have to do later today? And so that makes the rest of that day go a little bit easier. A great book on this subject is The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, and he talks about how, in modern days, people just absolutely shy away from discomfort, right? They want it to be the perfect temperature in the house. They don't want it to be 2 degrees too cold or 2 degrees too warm. And when they're outside, they got to have just the right jacket on, and they don't want to push themselves physically. And he would argue through his research that like our human brain needs that stuff. It needs to be uncomfortable. It needs to be challenged. And I also find like when I go out and it's freezing cold, how great does walking in the house feel again, right? Or when it's a really nasty winter, how incredible does that spring feel? And so that modulation of your life can't just be external. I think you should cause those things to happen, which I think makes you enjoy the ride more.
Absolutely. I think too, being too comfortable is a breeding ground for mediocrity.
Yeah.
And, just being, coasting through life, being mediocre, like not going too far, not doing too many, not pursuing too much, just coasting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can cause a lot of depression and negative experiences that people would like not to have, but do have because it is just more comfortable to do it and not pushing yourself.
Yeah.
It's easy to our our current society, and there's a lot of ways that, in the United States right now to just be comfortable, to sit on the couch and to watch Netflix and to not pursue anything that's really going to make you uncomfortable or give you any feelings of discomfort. But
Yeah.
in the pressing through of that, I think that there is power that can be found.
Yeah, no question. I mean, the stat I heard a few years ago is that first generation immigrants are 4 times more likely to become millionaires as a native born American, right? So who's got the real advantage here? If we're talking, real numbers, real connections, of course it's the native born, right? But it's that sense of comfort and probably even a little sense of entitlement that prevents them from, doing what I think they would probably want, frankly, at the end of the day. But that first generation immigrant, feels very much like it's on them, and they have to earn that and justify their existence here probably, and prove their parents right when the discussion came, about coming here. And so I've always found that to be a really awesome statistic for people that say that it's just about external circumstances, right?
Yeah. 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 For sure. So interesting to have this conversation and just, to be talking about creating luck and positive mental real estate. And are there any final thoughts that you have to just really help, like if somebody is thinking like, well, that must be easy for them and she just must be lucky, what would you say to somebody that kind of has those types of thoughts?
Going back to that, protecting your mind and emotions and focus and all that kind of stuff. I would just say, try the experiment, right? Uh, take a take a 2 week period and watch no news, read no newspapers, stay off social media, and replace that, because I don't think you can just say no or turn that off, but replace that with intentionally, if I'm going to build this bookcase inside of me of all the traits and skills and thoughts that I want to be true for me, replace that with some of that material, right? It could be a book from Brene Brown about mindset or relationships or something along that line. It could be, business or investing or some other, positive thing that you have an interest in. But try to surround yourself and truly be absorbed by something that has a positive direction and a positive possible outcome, and just see what happens. And I think you'll find out, I think, over time, that you have a little bit more control over your state, and positivity, and again, and then just in front of that would be, decide what those few actions are, and go through the motions, and see what that feedback loop tells you. I think you'll like it.
Yeah. If you have time, I have one more question. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
As a salesperson, how do you create your own luck?
I've one of the uh, things that I've said 1,000 times in my sales management career is sales is first and foremost a matter of discipline, not skill. And what that, and I really truly believe that comes as a surprise to most new salespeople, right? They think that, man, if I just could say things like that guy says it, or if I had the quick, catchy little phrase to come back at the customer with at just the right time, or I could read the book of 100 closes or whatever, like that's where the magic is at. And I believed that too in my early career. Uh, but truly, sales is a numbers game first, right? It's if I make a sale, on average, I'm going to make a sale, whatever, one, two, three, 4 times out of 10. And so that, and each sale nets me X dollars, whatever percentage, 5% of that or whatever. And I want my income to be such. If we back it out on the other side, that means you're going to have to talk to a whole bunch more customers than what you are now. So if you want to sit and wait for things to come to you, or only do these actions that I'm suggesting lead to more results occasionally instead of every single time, well, your current results, your current system was perfectly built to produce the results that you're getting right now. And so if you don't want the results you're getting right now, the system you have has to go or has to change. And so, little things like inside the stores, for example, we find that, if a salesperson talks with every single customer who looks at a mattress about the premium bedding package that we have, that's an incredible deal. It also gets you a 1 year comfort trial. We find if a salesperson will talk about that package with 10 out of 10 customers, we know that 6 to 8 of those people are going to buy. We know that. And so when I see a salesperson's numbers struggling, they'll tell me they're asking every single time. But when I observe and listen and watch, that's not what I see. And it could be because they forget. It could be because they judge this customer and decide that they've already spent as much as they can spend, or they're intimidated by the customer and they're not willing to ask. And so rather than say, hey, let's come up with some fancy thing to say or some kind of closing technique or whatever the case is, well, I'm going to go back to the beginning and go, sales is first and foremost a discipline activity. And so I want you, I don't care what the results are. I don't care if it's 0 out of 10. I want you to make sure and ask every single time. And what I know is if they do that, they're going to see some results. And so we may not be able to get them to 8 out of 10. I don't know. But let's say we move from 2 out of 10 to 6 out of 10. Now we can start talking about how do we change the words that we say? How do we tell a better story? How are we more descriptive? How do we illustrate the value of this in a better way? But the fact of the matter is, I believe 80% of the results are about the discipline of doing the things that you should do every single time. How that relates then also to like our quarterly theme, create your own luck, is, we have to get more offers in people's hands that are not already standing inside the building. And so, gosh, I know that if we put a coupon or an offer of some kind in 10 customers' hands, maybe one will exercise that. And right now, our advertising is not producing the traffic that we want. General business conditions are slower, and so we can wait for something to change or happen, and maybe we can survive that. Maybe we can't. I don't know. But the truth is I'm not willing to let that happen. We have got to dramatically increase the number of offers. We got to dramatically increase the number of people out in the world that have some interaction with us in some way, and it can't always come from advertising dollars. And so I'm asking every single person in our company to use whatever resources they have to get our name and to get our offers in other people's hands, and hopefully try to change some of the business results, regardless of what happens with the national economy or the tariffs or anything else. And so, we've got 70 some employees. We've got probably, close to half of those work in fulfillment. They're not in stores. They're not selling. They're not talking to customers in a sales situation. But holy cow, of those, whatever, let's call it, 40 people or whatever, they've all got a lot of friends. They've got a lot of family. They're talking to customers in the home during delivery. We've got collectively in our company, with people who do not sell and who do not work in stores, we've got the potential of hundreds or thousands of extra interactions and extra offers that we could be taking advantage of. And the net result of that is we're all going to benefit from each person trying to contribute to the numbers that we're getting with our store. And so, if you believe like I do that a business is responsible for putting food on the table for 75 families or whatever that number is, that's a solemn responsibility. And we don't get to just come here and go through the motions. It's incumbent on each of us to do everything in our power to help this team win, because we're going to be the beneficiaries of that ultimately. So
Absolutely. And, by doing that, I just want to remind everybody out there that's listening is by doing this action and taking, talking to more people, you benefit as well. It's not just for the company, it's for yourself too. Like if you go out there and you talk to more people and there are more people that buy, you have the potential to increase your own income. And there's a lot of empowerment that happens with that. Like you are in the driver's seat of your income and your potential.
yeah, I mean, you could extrapolate this to any direction you wanted to, but if we have a first year delivery guy who feels invisible in this company and he's not working in stores and he's not in a commission sales career, like what's the benefit of playing this game? It's everything, right? The benefit is, first of all, we're incentivizing our operations teams to give their individualized discount codes out on social media. And if the grocery store, if somebody sees the badge on their shirt and asks them where they work, to drop off flyers and door hangers when they're out doing deliveries around neighborhoods. We're going to give them a little chunk of that because that's an important activity for us. And then the other side of it is like, you know, what reputation are you building inside the company, right? Are you somebody who is a hustler who wants to play our game, who helps the team win? I promise you, over a 10-year period, being that person who is all in on the games that we're playing is going to result in something good. It might be a promotion inside this company. You might end up being a store manager someday, right? We've had, you know, part-time delivery people turn into great store managers. Now, it took 10 or 15 years, but that's probably a position they might not have been able to get to, frankly, if, you know, if they had not shown very early on at the smallest stage of their career that they're willing to go all in, give a great customer impression, play the games that we want to play. And so, yeah, I think create your own luck extends to every minute of the day. And in the activities that you're doing, are you trying to be great? Are you trying to contribute to the team? And, you know, I'm just a firm believer that eventually that comes back to you in a good way.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in that as well. And shameless plug, I have a 10% off coupon. So if you would like that coupon, let me know. I'd be happy to send it to you. Um, but I also love the idea of just playing a game and making it more fun to get out there because then, you can create some like momentum fun. See how many no's you can get, see how many yeses you can get, talk to new people, make it a little more interesting than just follow up with everybody, just do the
Yeah.
monotonous, boring thing, like make it a game and make it a little more fun to play.
Yeah, I think, you know, these quarterly themes that we do in our company, there's so much great stuff, you know, that comes out of that. You know, we as a company, we get to not be all square jawed and steely eyed, and we're just about numbers and doing the business and having to do those routine activities and all that kind of stuff. We get to say, hey, listen, we want to make this fun. We want to make it interesting. We want to, as a leadership team, take these things that we've decided are the most important thing in our business right now, and we want to make sure that gets down to every single employee in the company, no matter if you started a week ago and you've got the least, productive job in the company or whatever it is. How can we make this fun and interesting? How can we make sure the story gets out there? I think a lot of times when business leaders do strategy, it never leaves the meeting room, right? The average employee at the baseline level, who, by the way, is probably interacting with more of our customers every day than any of the top managers are, they didn't get the message. This is a way to make sure they get the message and do it in a fun way. And then, of course, as you know, we provide some nice prizes. Like somebody who plays the game the hardest in our company this quarter, they're going to get to go on a paid trip to Vegas with a friend. So, you know, gosh, doesn't hurt to win a prize that's worth winning.
Absolutely. I love that you guys incentivize and, it does make it a lot more fun and, interesting to play the game. So, yeah.
Good. No, thank you. Listen, it's been fun today. I appreciate it, Joanna.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Have
Yep.
a great
You as
afternoon.
well. See
Bye.
ya.
I just finished up the second interview of Leadership Mind with Carson Rowh, and that conversation was so much fun to have because I'm sitting here just really thinking about some of the things that he said and what I'm walking away with. And I wanted to share those with you. And let me know what your ahas are if you want to post below some of your ahas. Something that really is sticking out to me right now is the idea of protecting your energy and not just allowing yourself to like tumble down. Like the image that I get is like standing at the top of a hill and you're thinking like, should I go down or should I go up? Or maybe you're not even, you're just kind of there. And then all of a sudden something negative happens and you start like falling and then something else. And it just creates this tumbling motion. But having the ability to stop and protect your energy when you're starting to complain or think negative thoughts or think things are not going to work out for you, allowing them to have the opportunity to work out. And that was also so much fun because hearing hearing what Carson has done in his life, reading the books, and one of the things that stuck out to me was his story of self-confidence and the way that he was able to do that. Like, I'm going to be a confident person. And so, what does a confident person look like? What do they do? How do they act? And doing those same things, recreating that in your body. So if you need help with that, if you are somebody that struggles with confidence, maybe enter a situation where you put your shoulders back, your chin is lifted, you put a smile on your face. Those are all things that will help you feel more confident. And then other people gain that back and they will reciprocate that and they see that in you. In my coaching practice, we have a game that we play. Um, it's called Alter Ego, and it really is helping you set up an alter ego, somebody that you can step into, somebody that you can put your normal self just to the side for a second and step into a different personality for just a little bit to be able to come to a new place and try some new things. Also, we have to talk about discipline and action. Discipline, even in sales, even with those things that you want to be doing, like having the discipline, the commitment, and the follow through to be able to do those is really going to get you the results that you want. And so, for those of you that are listening today, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and continue to follow through, persevere, be persistent on the things that you know that you really, really want and walking down the path, even if it is hard and even if it feels like you're struggling. Um, and then also talking to people, making sure that you are putting yourself out there, getting some new information, talking to, doing networking is so incredibly powerful for, if you are in sales, management, a leader, whatever you're doing, that can be so incredibly powerful. So, thank you so much for taking the time to watch with us today. Please let me know, what was your biggest takeaway? What are you walking away? And let me know, was this conversation insightful? Was it helpful? Do you have more questions? Did I miss anything? What would you like to ask or what would you like to know? So that next time I can be sure to ask that question. All right, we'll talk soon, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye.